Ms. Carol Arguillas, the founders and prime movers behind Mindanao and our Mindanao. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, maayong hapon sa inyong tanan. It's a good thing I was able to go inside the Museo Dabawenyo, and I encountered this display on the ethnographic map of Davao, which I think applies to most of Mindanao. And before my remarks, I would like to share with you two brief anecdotes. The first is from Princess Habiba Sarip. She is the first, probably the only anchor person from Muslim Mindanao who is now with our People's Television. She anchors our News at One program. And we had a writer's workshop a few weeks ago, and she said we may want to make it a policy that whenever there is a news item pertaining to persons or individuals from this region, if we could avoid using as if it is a generic term, Muslim, the term Muslim, because it at once gives certain connotations that may not be congruent with the actual facts of the situation. And when she said this, I was reminded of what was shared by Justice Marvic Leonen at a Rotary Assembly in Cebu in February this year. I think Justice Leonen is one of the most engaging public speakers of our time. It was past 8 o'clock in the evening. It was an audience of Rotarians, and members of Rotary clubs have an attention span of a grand total of 18 seconds. And Justice Leonen was able to hold their attention for more than an hour. They kept quiet, they listened to him, and he began by narrating how his best recollection of the way that the government of the Philippines and MILF panels reached an agreement for the Bangsamoro Framework Agreement. And he said, in the end, it turned out to be a very simple but very important idea. And it is captured, the essence is captured in just one word, Bangsamoro. Because he said there is a giant leap from the concept of ARMM, no? Muslim Mindanao, to the concept of Bangsamoro. Because according to him, when you use the term Bangsamoro, then you speak about not just the Muslim in Mindanao, but of the Tausug, the Maguindanao, the Maranao, the Iranon, the Sama, and the other ethnic groups that represent the collective identity of what is geographically known now as Bangsamoro. And he said that is what really produced the breakthrough in the peace negotiations. The breakthrough that led to the signing of the framework agreement. And as we know, we now find ourselves in the threshold of completing that agreement with the final two annexes to the agreement. I wish to thank the Mindanao News Cooperative for inviting me to be a witness to a pathfinding event, today's launching of Our Mindanao, the weekly print edition of Mindanao News that was launched more than 10 years ago as a daily online information provider. What seems to be at first impression a step back in today's high-velocity information environment is actually a bold forward initiative to take the road less traveled. I salute the men and women of Mindanao News for establishing a news cooperative that is committed to professional and responsible journalism. They have embarked upon a mission to shape an informed consciousness among Mindanaoans, believing that a purposive sense of identity leads to better citizenship. Our organization, the Presidential Communications Operations Office, and its field network, the Philippine Information Agency, hereby affirms its solidarity with Mindanews. When President Aquino spoke last year at the 25th anniversary of PIA, he reiterated the underlying philosophy for government communication in the post-EDSA era that was clearly spelled out by his own mother in December 1986. The purpose of government communication is to ensure that we have a well-informed citizenry that is capable of deciding what is best for themselves, their communities, and their country. Informed choice leads to enlightened decision-making. Informed choice engages, enables, and transforms. Hence, our concept of public information is that it is not propaganda. It is not Big Brother looking over every citizen's shoulder. It is not command and control. It does not favor censorship or any form of prior restraint. It is social communication. Communication that will benefit society. Communication that promotes inclusive growth and sustainable development. Only the other day, we witnessed a landmark event, the Million People March, that involved Filipinos throughout the country, and even those living and working overseas. In my view, it was the second most significant social mobilization event that we have witnessed in the last 3 years. You may be wondering why it is the second and not the first. The first was the May 2010 election, which our fellow journalist Conrado de Quiros aptly characterized as EDSA people power masquerading as an election. As one who was directly involved in that presidential election as a volunteer in the Noynoy Aquino Media Bureau, I realized the immense power of social media. With meager funds and a sparse formal organization, the candidacy of then Senator Noynoy Aquino was propelled by a tremendous momentum. The yearning for a clear break from a culture of impunity and decadence in governance. In a very real sense, Noynoy Aquino is the first president elected in the time of Facebook and Twitter. But just as we have realized the tremendous power of social media, we have also become cognizant of its limitations. As pointed out by Ms. Carol Arguillas in her letter of invitation, in the era of Facebook and 140-character Twitter feeds, with too much information available 24/7, there is an even greater need to process the information gathered and put in the context to help us better understand Mindanao's complex issues. Eric Smith, the CEO of Google, and Jared Cohen, the head of Google Ideas, analyzed this phenomenon in the book The Digital Age, in which they offer insights that are highly relevant to the work of Mindanews and the launching of our Mindanao. Allow me to quote and paraphrase what they wrote in Digital Age as a means of framing the unique role that has been taken on by Mindanews and our Mindanao. While they wrote about the role of the established media in the first world/American milieu, their perspective, in my view, uncannily approximates the concept of Mindanews and our Mindanao. They said, and I quote and paraphrase, "The role is primarily that of being an aggregator, custodian, and verifier, a credibility filter that sifts through all of this data and highlights what is and what is not worth reading, understanding, and trusting. It involves the serious work of journalism, the investigative reporting, the high-level interviews, the prescient contextualization of complicated events, and validation will be critical, as well as the media's ability to provide cogent analysis. Ideally, the business of journalism will be less extractive and more collaborative." End of quote. To recap, the essential roles of media today are truth verifier, fact filter, context provider, analyst, and synthesis. What we're saying is that we cannot afford to be simply inundated by breaking news. that finds itself in our smartphones through SMS, in our email, through internet messages, and through the social media platforms of Twitter and Facebook. We cannot by default accept what is trending. We have to go beyond the spur of the moment concerns of the so-called netizens. Beyond performing these essential roles of truth verifier, fact filter, context provider, analyst, and synthesis, from Mindanews, you have extended your reach to our Mindanao. As you say, Ato Kini Mindanao. You're deeply committed to fulfilling the great promise of Mindanao and to translate this concept to living reality. Beyond opting to travel on the road less taken, you have decided to carve a distinct identity that will lead to the fulfillment of the Mindanaoans' fullest potentials. I was sharing with Carol and Gail and others earlier. One of the discussions we had in the cabinet leading to the inputs that we gave to the negotiating panel. As you know, one of the most contentious issues was on wealth sharing. And after so much back and forth and talking about agreement, the truth to tell, as pointed out by Mr. John Gaisano, with Mindanao making up 40% of our land mass, and with still its underperforming 30% contribution to our productivity as a nation, the complete fruition of a peace agreement that will open up the whole of Mindanao to tourism and to investments will virtually unlock the vast potentials of this of Mindanao. The truth to tell, even if we were to make the formula 100-0 in favor of Bangsamoro, there will be no loss and only gain for the country. And that is how important or significant Mindanao is. So let me end by saying that our common interest transcends tomorrow's headlines and breaking stories. We want to discover and understand the wellsprings of our people's aspirations and dreams. So let's make it not just our Mindanao, but our Pilipinas. Marami pong salamat at magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.